He was supposed to be the revolution, the pop star who would topple a dictator. But today, Bobi Wine's political movement is in crisis, his supporters are disillusioned, and Uganda's future hangs in the balance. Is he a failed revolutionary or a leader biding his time? Some call him the Mandela of East Africa. Others say he's a populist who promised too much. Who's right? This is the untold story of Bobi Wine and why his struggle matters for Kenya and the entire region right now. To understand the Bobi Wine phenomenon, you have to go back to 2017. Robert Kyagulanyi Sentamu, known by his stage name Bobi Wine, was a massively popular Afrobeat singer. He entered politics, winning a parliamentary seat. But his real rise began when he positioned himself as the youthful, charismatic alternative to President Yoweri Museveni. Museveni took power in 1986, promising no more life presidencies. Yet 38 years later, he's still there. Bobi Wine's People Power movement, later the National Unity Platform, or NUP, tapped into a deep well of frustration. Uganda has one of the youngest populations on Earth, with over 78% under 30. They've only known one ruler. Bobi Wine offered change. The 2021 presidential election was the climax. Bobi Wine ran against Museveni. What followed was a brutal crackdown. Over 50 people were killed in pre-election protests. Bobi Wine was arrested multiple times, his campaign rallies blocked, his supporters jailed. The internet was shut down on election day. Official results gave Museveni 58% and Bobi Wine 34%. The NUP cried foul, alleging massive fraud, but the courts upheld the result. Since that defeat, the central tension has been this: is Bobi Wine's movement a viable political force, or is it being systematically dismantled by one of Africa's longest-serving regimes? The controversy isn't just about votes. It's about the very soul of political opposition in East Africa. Supporters of Bobi Wine argue he is a legitimate, democratically elected leader whose movement represents the undeniable future of Uganda. Proponents point out that his 2021 performance was miraculous given the circumstances. They say he campaigned under a state of siege, with his top organizers abducted by security forces in unmarked vans, a tactic known as drumming. Despite this, he officially secured over 3.5 million votes. His supporters argue the real number was much higher. They see him as a symbol of relentless courage. While other opposition figures have been co-opted or silenced, Bobi Wine continues to speak out, even after surviving what he claims were assassination attempts, including a poisoning. His international profile is a key asset. Supporters argue that by keeping Uganda's democratic struggle in global headlines, meeting with U.S. senators, addressing the European Parliament, he applies crucial pressure that Museveni cannot ignore. They point to the NUP structure; it's not a one-man show. The party holds over 60 parliamentary seats, making it the official opposition. This, they say, is a beachhead for change. Furthermore, they argue the movement's strength is in its grassroots, decentralized nature. Even with leaders in prison, local activists organize. The argument is simple: demography is destiny. Museveni is 79. Bobi Wine is 42. Time, they believe, is on their side. Every day, thousands of young Ugandans come of age, entering an economy with scarce jobs, and they blame the old guard. Bobi Wine's message of systemic change resonates powerfully with this group. Proponents conclude that calling the movement a failure ignores the sheer scale of repression it faces. They are not losing a fair fight, they are fighting a rigged system with incredible bravery. But wait, there's another side to this story. But critics argue a different story. They see Bobi Wine as a populist whose strategy has hit a dead end, leaving his followers exposed and his movement fractured. Opponents counter that his international advocacy has come at a domestic cost. They say he spends too much time courting Western media and not enough time building a concrete, policy-driven coalition at home. His platform, they argue, remains heavy on emotion and light on detailed economic plans. Some former allies have turned critics, accusing the NUP of being autocratic internally, mirroring the very system it claims to fight. There are also pointed questions about the 2021 election aftermath. Critics ask, where was the sustained, strategic resistance after the results were announced? The protests fizzled. The legal challenge failed. Since then, the regime has been methodical. Over 25 NUP MPs have been arrested or charged with crimes critics call politically motivated. The party's Secretary General, Louis Rubungoya, operates under constant threat. The critics' strongest argument is about results. What has the confrontational strategy actually achieved? Museveni's grip appears stronger than ever. The economy stumbles, but the security apparatus is intact and loyal. Furthermore, skeptics point out a regional pattern. They draw comparisons to Kenya's Raila Odinga, a perennial opposition figure who galvanizes masses but repeatedly falls short at the ballot box, leading to what some call opposition fatigue. Is Bobi Wine on the same path? There's also the uncomfortable question of safety versus strategy. Critics argue that by positioning himself as a martyr, Bobi Wine has made himself a target and, more importantly, made every person who wears a red beret, the NUP symbol, a target for state violence. Has this heroic narrative actually led to unnecessary suffering without a clear path to victory? The counter-narrative is bleak. The movement is being slowly, painfully suffocated, and its leader has no plan B. So who's right? Let's look at the evidence. The data paints a complex picture of repression and resilience. First, the crackdown is quantifiable. According to the UN Human Rights Office, over 1,000 people were arrested in the 2021 pre-election period. A 2023 report by Human Rights Watch documents at least 200 cases of enforced disappearance linked to state security since 2021. The economy provides another data point. Uganda's youth unemployment rate is estimated at over 13%, but underemployment is the real crisis, affecting most young adults. This is the tinder for Bobi Wine's support. However, expert analysis from neutral political risk firms suggests Museveni's control is multifaceted. It's not just fear, it's patronage. A vast network of military and civil service jobs, coupled with rural development projects, buys loyalty in key voting districts. International comparisons are telling. Look at Ethiopia or Rwanda. Strongman politics in the region is resilient. Democratic transitions are messy and rare. Experts note that the NUP's parliamentary presence is a double-edged sword. It gives a platform, but also forces them into a system rigged against them. Legislation is routinely passed by the ruling party's supermajority. The data on public opinion is hard to verify, but Afrobarometer surveys suggest a deep public distrust in electoral institutions. This helps the NUP's claim of fraud, but it also breeds cynicism that hurts all political actors. The evidence suggests a stalemate, a regime too repressive to beat electorally under current rules, and an opposition with significant popular appeal, but unable to force a change in those rules. The numbers show a nation at an impasse. The reality is more complex than hero or failure. Bobi Wine is likely both a genuine threat to the regime and a leader navigating an impossible chessboard. What most people miss is that his real achievement may be existential. He has repoliticized a generation that was told politics was Museveni's domain. He has made the Kyagulanyi effect a permanent variable in Ugandan calculations. The regime's brutal response is a backhanded compliment to his potency. However, the uncomfortable truth is that moral authority and international fame do not, by themselves, dislodge entrenched power. The movement faces a strategic trilemma. It can't win a clean election because none will be offered. It can't successfully launch an armed uprising against a powerful military, and a purely peaceful, protest-based strategy risks being incrementally crushed. The nuance is in the long game. Bobi Wine's role may be to sustain the idea of an alternative until a catalytic event, an economic shock, a split within the regime. Museveni's eventual departure creates an opening. He is keeping the flame alive in a very long, very dark night. But the cost, measured in lost lives and broken families, is tragically real. For ordinary Ugandans, this stalemate means continued anxiety. Young activists live in fear of abduction. Families are torn apart by politics. The economic desperation that fuels the protest vote only deepens. For Kenyans watching, this is a stark lesson. It highlights the fragility of democratic institutions and the high price of confronting incumbency. So what's next? Watch the parliament. Can the NUP bloc act cohesively to expose corruption and propose laws? Watch the streets. Will economic pressures spark spontaneous unrest that the movement can channel? And watch Museveni's health. Succession planning within the ruling party could create chaos and opportunity. The next 18 months are critical. So, is Bobi Wine Uganda's future, or a prophet of a revolution that may never come? The debate rages. Now I want to hear from you. Are you Team Bobi Wine, believing he's the courageous future? Or Team Critic, believing his strategy is failing? Drop a 1 in the comments if you see him as the revolutionary in waiting, a 2 if you see him as the flawed populist. Share this deep dive with someone who needs to see both sides of this critical story for our region. Subscribe to Kenya News Update today for more breaking news and in-depth analysis.